Good evening, I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Welcome to News Cafe. Tonight, we get into the minds of two young creative innovators as we find out how they are making waves in social entrepreneurship and technological progress. For the first half of the show, we will speak with Bryan Benitez McLealand, founder of Bambike, a socio-ecological enterprise that hand makes bamboo bicycles with fair trade labor and sustainable building practices. And later on, we will talk to inventor-entrepreneur Matthew Kua of the Ateneo Innovation Center, Sky Eye Inc., and Awesome Lab Inc. Hi, Bryan. Good evening. Welcome to News Cafe.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. When you came to the Philippines to start this initiative, you were here as a master's student from University of Pennsylvania, and you started work in Gawad Kalinga and formed their green building program. Tell us about that.
So, yeah, Green Kalinga developed as an offshoot of my master's thesis, which was on sustainable community development. So in my studies, I was looking at various ways that we could incorporate more green and sustainable building practices with Gawad Kalinga in their nation building, with building houses and transforming the lives of the poor. So I came to the Philippines after I'd finished my academic work and wanted to implement the paper writing and actually put the pedal to the metal and make things happen. So I got engaged in building a community. My mother was actually involved also in raising funds with some of the Philippine Women's University alumni group. And then we were integrating some of our green building practices into that. And that turned into GK Munting Paraiso in Tres Martires.
Okay, so this is when you came up with the BAM Ecological Technology Incorporated. That was kind of your platform to start the...
So that business evolved afterwards. So I continued on as a volunteer with Gawad Kalinga. Originally, I thought I'd be here maybe only 6 months, to be honest. Finish my paper, implement the program, and then leave. But as many people who work with GK know, once you start, you kind of get really involved and dedicated to the cause. So what happened to me was...
You fell in love with
GK. I learned to fall in love more with the country because being half Filipino, I didn't really know what my Filipino-ness meant. Because I had a disconnect. I grew up in the States, and despite coming back and forth for vacation, I never immersed myself here. So working with GK kind of led from one project to another, one curiosity led to the next, and more projects evolved. So long story short, back to the Bambikes, that came up because we were looking for sustainable solutions to create jobs for the people that needed them the most. So the livelihood development program is where the shift came from building houses, and then the focus was on creating sustainable jobs. And my volunteerism was not sustainable for me. So in order to get myself a job and to create jobs for the communities with which I was involved, we decided that Bamboo Bikes was really the best bet because one, it combines two things that I'm really passionate about. Biking, because it's arguably one of the most efficient ways to get around. And then also bamboo, because it's arguably the greenest building material on the planet. So when you combine the two, you have Bambike. And I discovered this technology from a guy who was doing a project in Africa, and I thought it was appropriate for our current situation here in the Philippines.
Right, so why a bamboo bike? I mean, obviously something that's already green transportation becomes even greener with bamboo. Is that right?
And then also, it's very labor intensive to create. It's a handmade craft of sorts, and it takes between 40 and 50 man hours to assemble a bike frame.
So this is all handmade, the whole thing, really?
Yes.
What is the process of making it, actually? So the frame here is all bamboo, isn't it?
Yeah, we manufacture the body and then some accessories like the baskets.
Okay.
This particular bike is named the Victoria. It's named after the GK community where we're building the bikes. So I have 6 full-time builders there. And the process starts with the harvesting of the bamboo. So it actually was quite challenging to find the right species, the right maturity, and the right treatment method for the bamboo. A lot of people have this perception that bamboo is kind of a easy to break thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's stigmatized as the poor man's lumber, but really digging deep and learning from the furniture industry and online materials and just getting my hands wrapped around bamboo, I learned a lot, and we developed some of our own techniques on when to harvest, which species to use, and how to treat bamboo in the most ecological way, and also just to make sure that it's the strongest building material we can use.
So you have abaca fibers there wrapped around at some of the joints, the certain joints, and
Right.
you use aircraft grade alloys. Is that right?
Yes, so there are 3 main building materials in a bamboo frame. It's about 95% bamboo for the body, but then on the joint locations for the head tube, the seat tube, the bottom bracket, and the rear wheel dropouts, those are alloy because it's a metal to metal connection. So we fuse that with our technology to join with the bamboo, which is fastened by abaca. And then once that resin sets, it's a permanent one-piece structure that we can, build and put the components on.
All right. How do they compare to the normal metal bikes? I mean, some bike aficionados may be a bit wary and say, well, they won't be as strong as the metal ones. Maybe. How is the performance of this?
Sure. So from a rider's standpoint, it's actually quite nice. I mean, we're not trying to hit the super high-end performance market, although we do have race bikes and mountain bikes which can handle it. But for your average user, bamboo is fantastic because it has vibration dampening qualities. So it actually makes for a really smooth ride because what's known as road buzz or road chatter gets absorbed by the frame.
Oh,
so what normally in a steel or a stiffer alloy frame would transfer from the road up to the seat and the handlebars, the frame has a good way of just dampening that out and making it smooth. And then in terms of strength, we've been independently tested by a company that does product quality control in Taiwan, and we've passed the highest international bike standards for impact testing, fatigue, and durability.
Right.
So
and
they're built to last. Yeah.
That's good to know. And this has a warranty, doesn't it?
Yes. So we do have a 5-year warranty on the frames. So if an issue does arise, we'll stand behind our product.
Okay. And how much does one cost? This will range from, what is it, about $500? Is it?
So now we've actually been trying to make Bambikes more accessible to the local market. So we'll touch on Bambike Eco Tours, which is separate. But for that, and to complement it and bring the price down, we've launched a new bike model called the Malaya, which means freedom. Yeah. And we wanted to make Bambikes more accessible. So our complete bike models start at 15,000 pesos and up from there. So some of
the models, let's talk about some of the ones I've seen on your website. You have the Miranila. This is more the street bike, isn't it? Tell us about some of the other different models, because they're made for different types of riders.
Right. So the Miranila, we can run it as a single speed, fixie, or full race bike. We have the Luntian, which is our all-terrain bike, and now we have the new 29er, which is a part of that fleet. So it's moving in the same direction as the progressive mountain bike community.
Okay.
Then we also have the Ligtasin Cove, which is our beach cruiser bike.
Nice. You have a BMX also.
Yes, so we have the BMX, which is exciting because Philippines just won gold in the Asian Games. So we're actually planning on developing some of that BMX action here with Gawad Kalinga. So these are preliminary plans, but we want to build off of the success of our Philippine rider and then also make that accessible for the poor so that, you know, everyone can dream and strive to really take Philippine biking to the next level.
Yes. And earlier you said this is the Victoria, so this is more the city, what is this, more a city bike?
Yeah, so this can be termed a city bike, although one of my friends just took this around the GK Enchanted Farm while preparing for our eco fashion show, and she was harvesting leaves and flowers and various organic materials to accessorize some of our French models that we had.
Yeah.
And she came back with, you know, a whole basket full of natural goodies that, you know, were accentuating the beauty of our international volunteers and community partners.
Yeah, well, since you brought it, tell us about that. You were recently at this summit at the Enchanted Farm. What was that about?
Yes, so we just celebrated our 11th anniversary at Gawad Kalinga. So that was the GK Expo. But leading up to that, we had a big Gawad Kalinga Social Business Summit, which set to highlight all of the sustainable livelihood programs and social entrepreneurs that are engaging with our GK communities around the country. And then especially on the GK Enchanted Farm in Bulacan, and showing also local government representatives, state universities, and private businesses that it makes good business sense to have, you know, pro-poor business models.
Well, sorry, good point to ponder. I have to stop you there because we need to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Bryan's Bambike tours and the Bam bow tie. Welcome back to News Cafe. I'm talking to Bryan Benitez McLealand, founder of Bambike. All right, Bryan, we were just talking about the summit, the GK Summit. Now, a lot of interesting talks and people you met there. What was the highlight of this all for you?
Well, we did meet a lot of fantastic people who are passionate about, you know, ending poverty in the country. And it was fantastic to hear how people are executing different strategies, and then also how some people who have no idea what they want to do, but they want to help, coming to talk to different people who are involved in GK and see how they can become a part of this movement. But for me personally, I guess my takeaway is really a reaffirmed dedication to working with GK and seeing how we can use Bambike as a vehicle to really help end poverty and leave no one behind. Right. So with the walang iwanan philosophy, we want to give, you know, the best for the least and really bring world-class access for things that a lot of people take for granted to the poorest of the poor so that we can really end this cycle of poverty.
Well, let's talk about how your Bambike, your projects help the communities. So the BAM builders, how exactly this translate? When the bikes are sold, how does it benefit the communities?
Okay, so firstly, when we have our you know, bike building, it's a full-time job for our builders.
Who you call the BAM builders,
BAM builders, yes. So I try to BAM everything. You know. So the BAM builders get full-time employment with health and social security benefits. And then also, about 10% of the profits get reinvested into the community. So we're doing this in a number of ways, including a Seabowl School program where we sponsor their teacher. We're also helping through facilitating various book donation programs, and then also a weekly feeding program that provides, you know, nourishing, fortified food for the students so that they can, in part, learn about healthy eating, and then hopefully this trickles up to the families, but then also have the nutrients that they need to, you know, work throughout the day and develop mentally.
Now, an offshoot of all of this, because of the scraps, you had something called bamboo ties. How did that come? What made you think of that?
Right, so we don't ever want anything to go to waste. As a bootstrapping social entrepreneur, you look at things a bit differently, I think. At least I do, and I don't want to see any of our resources, even if it's the smallest piece of bamboo, which someone else might just throw out, go to waste. So I was just in Manila, I think, dreaming about all these different product ideas, and these small scraps of bamboo kept coming to mind, and I thought, what's the most effective way we can add value to that and create more jobs in the process? And ding, 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 like somehow, bamboo tie popped into my head. So I took my pocket knife out, started carving this really crude prototype, tied a piece of string around it, and then started wearing it for fun. And more people started asking me about it, saying they liked it, that they wanted one. So it was proof of concept, and then we decided to make, a few initial batches. And
this was a limited run, wasn't it? You also just made a few the first time.
Yeah, we just made, 10 at a time, and then we sold them out, and we made some more. And then they end up on fashion runways, they end up in, Style Bible, on the internet. They're in New York, they're at Barack Obama's inauguration. We see that it's kind of taken on a life of its own. People are wearing them in different ways and accessorizing them and customizing them. So it's a platform, and we have this quirky little saying.
It promotes the project.
Look cool and send kids to school. So, part of the proceeds are, helping education.
Yes.
And again, education is something that I didn't have to worry about, but I know for my builders and a lot of people out there, one of the biggest struggles is, sending their kids to school. And I don't want anyone in the Philippines to ever have to worry about basic education. So a lot of what we're trying to do is promote, environmental responsibilities, green business, but then also just fundamental education.
Yes, very important. Now, another form of education you do is also through your eco-tours, historical education. Tell us about the Bambike Intramuros eco-tour.
Right, so people find it kind of funny that a white guy is teaching them about Philippine history. But for me, it's been a wild trip because once we decided to create Bambike eco-tours, and then we launched in April of this year. It was actually on Earth Day that we launched. Prior to that, I was immersing myself in Philippine history and learning up on all of the Intramuros, Spanish heritage, and architecture and everything that is involved around there. So now we have a shop inside the San Luis complex, Plaza San Luis complex, which is right next to the Casa Manila Museum. And we've partnered with the Intramuros administration and are now doing guided bamboo bike tours around the old city. So for me, I think it's the best way to get a more comprehensive and holistic view of the walled city, because it's a 46-hectare area and it's not something that's easily walkable. And we on bikes have the ability to go inside, outside, up on top of the walls, and not break too much of a sweat. And so we cover 400 years of history in a few kilometers, and it's a lot of fun.
It is. And there's something magical about touring a city on a bike. It's really something else.
Right. So again, it's about bringing world-class products and services here to the Philippines. And I've been fortunate enough to take bike tours in a number of other countries, in Europe, around Asia, and in the US. And for me, it's always the best way to, get an overview and not be in a car or on a bus, and you can't get that far when you're walking. So on a bike, you're really open, you feel freer to explore, and I've loved traveling and seeing cities on bikes, and it's just not something that is popular here in the Philippines for a lot of reasons.
Pollution. Wow.
Yeah, pollution, traffic, safety. So by partnering with the Intramuros administration, we've come up with a way that it's a safe trip we have all of the Guardia Civil, on their radios, helping stop traffic if we're on any of the main roads. And now we're actually looking to work with the IA to create more pedestrianized tourist districts. So within the walls, creating bike lanes, pedestrian corridors.
That's great.
Bike parking at tourism destinations, and then also trying to limit traffic so that the area can be revitalized. Because if you look at any major city, Times Square, New York, they used to have cars going all through it. Now it's a pedestrian zone. All of the piazzas and plazas throughout Europe, they don't let cars in. And it's a model that we want to try and...
Perhaps other parts of the Philippines,
Yeah,
huh? Maybe
follow
Makati, Quezon City. And as we integrate with the ASEAN, other parts of Asia, huh?
Right, yeah.
Some of your big clients recently, the World Economic Forum guests, didn't you have some of them on the tour?
Right, so we had some of our, CNN news anchors come and ride around with us, saying it was, the best way to get around. And then also, I was just in Singapore and I rode around. There's a big biking community. So perhaps we can export our products and services to these other communities and lead by example, trying to, incorporate cultural heritage, environmental education, as well as showcase Philippine handmade products.
Exactly. Now, I'd like to just read something to you. According to Bill Drayton, who is CEO, chair, and founder of Ashoka, which is the largest network of social entrepreneurs worldwide, he said, social entrepreneurs are not content just to give a fish or teach how to fish. They will not rest until they have revolutionized the fishing industry. Do you think you've revolutionized the bamboo industry, the bike industry here?
Well, I think...
Seems you have.
If you look at the name of our company, it's Bambike Revolution Cycles. So just to explain the kind of tagline that we came up with, there are double meanings to each of those words, revolution and cycles. So revolution, we want to buck the system of business and show a better way of doing things. So we have really three core pillars in our ethos, and it's people, planet, progress. We want to take care of the people that are our stakeholders, that are our customers, that are our partners in development. We reinvest in the communities. We provide certified world-class products. We want to take care of the planet. We cannot expect to have climate change issues addressed without making sure that our supply chain management is sustainable, that we're making sure to replant and sequester more carbon dioxide than we emit. So we're planting bamboo, we're doing whatever we can to lower our carbon footprint. I bike as much as possible. And then progress. It's really about doing better business. Doing good, feeling good, and making a better model for profitable enterprise that incorporates the first two pillars, which are the people and the planet. So progressing out. So the revolution is the motion that the wheel takes, and we're hoping that that can gain traction. And then cycle. It's the bicycle, but it's also the upcycle, the recycle, the vehicle for change.
Yeah, right. Well, a lot of people riding on to this revolution. You're also collaborating with other people. Who are some of the people, like other designers that you are working with or looking to work with?
Right, so we're collaborating not only with people in the bamboo industry to help bring standards to that and develop bamboo in general throughout the Philippines, but then also we're looking to incorporate world-class design. So one of the projects that we're working on now is with Kenneth Kobompwe, and we're trying to transform the tourism vehicle, incorporating electric technology with the Bambike and then also his design eye, and create a new, more efficient and eye-catching way to get around tourism districts. And yeah, we have a few other things up our sleeve. One worth mentioning is our partnership with the Mapua Institute of Technology. We're in the process of creating this is a bamboo race car for the Eco Marathon.
Wow.
So it's not to get the highest speed, or the fastest time, but it's to have the most fuel efficient vehicle possible. So you get 1 liter of fuel in the race car, and you have to go as far as possible. So we're trying to incorporate our bike technology, but then also develop new technology to replace even carbon fiber, which is seen as one of the most high-end, lightest building materials.
Yes.
We're developing our own
Lots of exciting
engineering
projects.
in the organic realm.
Yeah. You also collaborated with our next guest, so you worked with Matthew Kua also, isn't it right?
Right. So we actually prototyped some of the initial electric Bambike technology a few years ago. So we want to upgrade that, bring it to the next level, and keep the Philippine technology and innovation on the forefront and push the limits to see what's possible with our local ingenuity and then also our natural resources.
Wonderful. Well said, Bryan. Thank you. And looking forward to all those new projects.
Yeah, thank you.
Time now for a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by inventor, entrepreneur, Matthew Kua. This is News Cafe, and we now talk to Matthew Kua, former Managing Director of the Ateneo Innovation Center, founder and Chief Executive Officer of SkyEye Inc., and President of Awesome Lab Inc. Matthew, welcome to News Cafe.
Hi, yes.
So all of these interesting companies you're part of, tell me about what you do in each, or what each of these centers actually do. Let's start with the AIC, Ateneo Innovation Center.
I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So basically, more of like, I want to do whatever I want to do. And then what that is helping people developing new technologies. So in the Ateneo Innovation Center, I was the former managing director. I'm still very active there. So the idea of the Ateneo Innovation Center is the academe. How do you make academe more innovative?
Yes.
Or I'm more of like the person instituted by the Ateneo to handle the external partners, how to bring industry back to Ateneo.
Bridging the gap, basically.
Bridging the gap between industry and the academe. I mean, in the Philippines, we're more of a teaching type of university.
Yeah.
Unlike in the United States and other countries that collaborate heavily as part of their DNA, here in the Philippines, we're more of a teaching type.
Yeah.
So the idea is to bring them more closer. At the same time, I tend to listen to the students and how to bridge the gap between students and faculty. Bringing them up to speed and allowing the students a way to express themselves that previously they cannot.
Right.
If you have a really weird student who is really passionate about something, a university may not be able to cater to them.
How did you feel as a student yourself finishing? Your course was
Management of Applied Chemistry.
So in that, as a student, what was it like for you, that environment?
It was weird because I was a management student, hanging out with engineers, having friends in the design.
Yeah.
So I was more of ever since I was a multidisciplinary type of person. So there's no outlet for students to express themselves in university. And you don't want them to drop out. You don't want them to express themselves outside of university. So the idea there is how do we create an atmosphere in the university to take care of these really bright students that may not fit in the traditional pegs of how we build our curriculum.
Right, so this is what the AIC is trying to do
Yes.
now, provide this opportunity for them.
And then it evolved from there is how do you then teach innovation? Even if people, there's a lot of science involved in innovation. How do you teach it? How do you instill it to students? So we're trying to figure out a way, how do we create innovation culture in the Philippines? You just can carbon paste kasi US culture to the Philippines. You cannot carbon paste European culture to the Philippines. We're a hodgepodge of Asian, European, and American kind of culture. So we have to have a very unique take on innovation.
Yeah. Now, a lot of this innovation is seen in your companies like SkyEye. Tell
Yes.
us what SkyEye does exactly.
So SkyEye actually was born out of research. So our research company went into commercial. So I was a master's student in environmental science, and I was annoyed that I didn't have a platform to sense the environment. So usually, whenever you do research, you go there with a boat, you bangka to the middle of the lake, and then you take your data, you either look at satellite photos, and for me, that was not enough for me to do my thesis. So I decided, okay, let's use drones for me to take photos of the Lake Palakpakin, wherein we study like fish kills, water hyacinth growth, and then use that as a platform to sense the world. And apparently, people want to use it for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
So we went into real estate, we went into agriculture, we went to infrastructure development, and then before you know it, we incorporated. And then only last year, around September, August, when we started full operations, and we started getting work from the government on forest protection. And when we found that, okay, the thing that we were supposed to think about before only as a research tool is actually useful for a lot of areas.
Yeah.
So Sky Eye is that kind of company. But we don't focus on building drones or selling the drones. We focus on how can drones help make the decision maker's life easier.
Right.
For example, landslides in the Philippines. So usually, whenever you have a mountain, you will have traditional landslides. But the government will tell the people there, you have to evacuate. But the people there won't evacuate because they will tell you, they've been there for their past generations, X amount of generations there, and they haven't died yet, so therefore, why should they move?
Yeah.
So what we do is we take a photo from the aerial drone of a landslide that happened nearby and told them, Manong, we print out a photo. Manong, your house is only 1 thumb away from the landslide. It may look far if you're actually on the ground looking up, but from the photo on top, you're just 1 thumb away. And because of that, they then evacuate on their own.
Fine.
So instead of like forcing people to evacuate, you let them decide.
Let them understand.
Yes,
right? Yeah. Now for Awesome Lab, what exactly do you do at Awesome? This is
So-
basically a playground for you.
Yeah, so I wanted to have a playground. So I created the playground together with me and my buddies, my chief technology officer,
other
my best
scientists.
friend, other scientists, engineers. We wanted to express ourselves. There was no environment for us to develop cool stuff. So we wanted to create an environment. So in Awesome Lab, we call it Awesome Lab, meaning we do awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So we do any manner of projects, although we have our own specialties, but we love handling tough problems. So tough problems are the ones that we solve. So either building and we do a whole range. So either we build a wastewater facility in Leyte, all the way down to building a device for concerts.
Yeah. So you've called yourself a zoo of geeks.
Yes, we're a zoo of geeks.
Basically, whatever you have in mind, you are able to then try it out here.
Yeah, so our motto is we think it, we make it, we launch it. So we think about it, we create it with our hands, and then we launch it to the world.
Yeah.
So we have scientists, engineers, mathematicians, chemists, engineers, designers, 3D artists. Yun.
Yeah.
And then meron kaming mga pens sa office. Yan, do not feed the designers. Yung ganun.
Para talaga kayong mga animals.
Para talagang animals yan. Talaga.
And with all these innovations, you were recognized recently by Rappler in the Do More Awards. You were finalists, the Innovator finalist in making ripples in the field of science and technology. Now, a big inspiration for coming up with the companies was you felt in college you realized there was a need for technological solutions to the country's problems. What were you really looking for, or what were you aiming for when you were starting all of these centers and companies?
Which can, I'm not, well, at the end of the day, I'm still a management student. So I still, what are the opportunities? I came from a Chinese family of entrepreneurs. So therefore, my first question was, what are the opportunities right now in my day and age? So I decided into maybe 4 verticals. So platforms, communication platforms, ICT, disasters, biotech, and then space and sea. So from there, I said, okay, what are these things we can get into? And I started companies to attack these certain fields.
Yeah.
So it's more of like, not really that I wanted to do something,
right,
but I saw opportunities and I wanted to place myself in that area.
Yeah.
Because number one, it's exciting.
Yes.
Being able to tackle a unique problem and set of challenges is something exciting to me.
Yes.
At the same time, there's opportunity there to get rich or to have a comfortable life if you tackle it successfully.
Very fascinating how you found opportunities out of problems like disaster. So you formed something out of disaster science. You said that we're facing problems now the world has never seen, like climate change, food security, urbanization, and this is how you kind of niched onto disaster science.
So after Ondoy happened, I decided, okay, I think I want to go into disasters. I want to study them more in depth than a traditional person would actually go into. And because I wanted to know if there's opportunity there. And what I found out is that, for example, the Philippines, we have all disasters. We have volcanoes, we have earthquakes, ball earthquake, we have typhoons, Typhoon Yolanda, and every year we have a typhoon, we have habagat, we have now tornadoes going inland, we have hail,
hailstorms,
we have everything.
Traffic
Traffic is also another man-made disaster. What we don't have is just snowstorms and blizzards. And I said, okay, either you play the victim or you use an opportunity. Because every year we are able to see a disaster. As a scientist, it becomes like exciting kasi instead of waiting forever, you can expect it to happen. So therefore, you can be prepared. It's repeatability of your test.
Yeah.
So we said, how can we understand the environment, the disasters, and create new products and solutions that we can export to other countries?
Yes.
The Philippines can be the center for disaster preparedness. We can be the center of disaster response and disaster resiliency. And it has happened already. I mean, our people on the ground from Typhoon Yolanda, Ondoy, in Mount Mayon, we're actually responding really, really well to disasters despite our developing country status.
Right.
But that came after painful experiences.
Yeah, and you're working with a lot of communities. So tell us about some of these interesting case studies of, yes, painful experiences, but also you're working to really try to change things.
Most Filipinos are intelligent.
Yeah.
And then they're very ingenious and inventive. So most communities already have adopted. Of course, we can have a lot of help more, and there's a lot of help and challenges to be done. But at the same time, there are a lot of communities that are starting to evolve and adjust to climate change because it's part of their lives.
Yes.
Fishermen know that there's less fish in the sea. People who plant rice know that climate change, typhoons and floods might ruin their crops. They may not have the answer, but they are starting to understand this.
For example, in Leyte, this is another, in the rice fields, you've been helping the farmers understand whether it's rice, different crops, no?
Yeah.
So for infrastructure development, with Sky Eye, for example, you mapped rice fields, which gives farmers easier access to infrastructure and equipment they need for farming.
So for example, we've been working with some mayors in
Yes.
some towns in Leyte, Aklan, in Mindanao, and even in Luzon using our drones. And the idea there is we map rice fields and marking them who owns which rice field.
Right.
Right. So whenever and then we print out a map and we show the farmer, here's your rice field. For example, in the north, when you're in the coastline, one of the problems is, of course, storm surges or water surges into your crops, and then salt water. Plants doesn't like salt water; they tend to die. So you usually have a mangrove protection to prevent the storm surges. But mangroves are also sources of charcoal. So people use the mangroves for charcoal. They chop it up, they make it into charcoal, and then they burn it. And over time, the mangroves then recede.
Yeah.
And to the point that they're gone. And then the salt water comes in, they start complaining. But if you show them a map and tell them, like I said about the landslides, there's a difference between a 1 finger thick mangrove and a 2 finger thick mangrove.
Yes.
What do you think is better for your crops? 1 finger, 2 finger thick? And they said 2 finger thick. And they now start to understand, and they start now properly managing their mangroves, reforestation, their mangrove maintenance.
Yes.
Because they now understand why they're important.
Exactly. More fascinating stories to come. We'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about tech challenges in the Philippines, and we get to play with some of the cool gadgets that Matthew's companies have created. Like me. You're watching News Cafe, and we are talking to Matthew Kua of Sky Eye Inc., Awesome Lab Inc., and the Ateneo Innovation Center. All right, Matthew, earlier we were talking about how it's quite difficult for tech companies in the Philippines. What do you think are the biggest challenges?
Actually, right now, it's far better than when I started 4 years ago. But the challenges right now in tech in the Philippines is that there's no ecosystem yet. So depends on, you can talk forever about it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the ecosystem here in the Philippines is not yet built. But more importantly, there's not enough clients.
Yeah.
Most people in the Philippines are very conservative, especially the big businesses. When you're trying to sell them a technology solution, they are not that open to that for now. Although of course that's changing smaller by smaller, but we have a traditional culture of not really trusting technology so much.
So it's this mindset and the culture. Most Filipinos are kind of risk averse, no? We're scared.
Yes.
Something more about personal politics, or it's more rather than technology. We're grounded on behavior.
That's one. I mean, relationships play a big part in how you can move on here in the business world.
Yeah.
But you're right that most of them is just risk adverse.
Yeah.
They don't want to tell their boss that they failed because they tried a new technology. It's like grounds for being fired.
Right. Of course, funding is a big problem now for research and development in most developed countries. The world is basically they have all the money to spend, but here it's not the case, isn't it?
So in the Philippines, although we're doing a good job already, like in the DOST has been funding a lot of good research. Everybody has been, there's a lot of funding coming in right now, but they're not enough, but enough for us to be trained to become really, really careful on where to spend. So I think that's okay. Having enough funding, but not too much, that allows us to bootstrap, allows us to make sure that we don't overspend, that whenever we buy something or do something, we think about it thoroughly.
So you come up with a lot of theories. The problem with science, sometimes it's all theory and we don't really see it implemented, but you make sure that your research comes out, the actions, for example, some of the inventions you have here. How do you go about doing that?
We start with the problem first, and then you try to find the scientific theory behind it in order to solve the problem. Yes, we want to do some theoretical science that may not affect the world immediately, but we don't have the luxury of that in the Philippines yet. The idea there is to move into applied research and development first, and then, but not forgetting about the core, like the core physics, core mathematics. We should be supporting them. But it's a balance. It's hard to balance as we have limited resources. But the idea is, as you get more resources, you of course put some into theoretical science, little by little. You just can't leave. It's like doing your muscles. You just can't pull biceps. You need to take care of your triceps, even if you're not using your triceps primarily in the one you're doing.
That's right. So how do you ensure good, successful solutions? Because you can really come up with anything. I mean, what makes it creative for you at your lab and at Sky Eye?
Well, it has to work outside of the lab. That's the first thing. I mean, most of the academies and even some technology companies, locally and abroad, primarily abroad, tend to have their own little world. Wherein, for a solution to work, it has to be brought outside. So once we have a prototype, once we have a proof of concept, we immediately bring it outside to the world and get it tested and see if it fly or not, and start iterating and iterating until we get to not really a perfect product, but a product that works well enough for it to be sold, for it to be useful.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of the things you have here. Let's start with this microscope. It's a very interesting looking microscope.
Okay, so one of the things that I'm into is education. I'm a teacher, I'm a scientist, so one of the things is education. And most labs in the Philippines do not have microscopes. High schools don't have microscopes. So we decided, okay, what can we do to help them? So we created a mini microscope made from acrylic that we laser cut because we have a laser cutter. And
laser cutters are fun.
Laser cutters are fun. I can tell you sometimes what we do with it. But generally speaking, the idea is everybody has a cell phone. All you do is you put if you borrow your cell phone, you put it on top of the lens, and you're able to view like small things like mosquitoes and studies.
Without special software?
Without special software.
This is just your lens.
That's your camera. The idea here is that most Filipinos, even in rural countries, would have a smartphone.
Yes.
But they wouldn't have a microscope.
True.
But the cell phone itself is powerful enough for it to be like an avenue for education. So that's what we did for this one. So the idea here is it's a prototype.
Okay.
We're now building it. We have done some trials in the mountains of Antipolo together with through my CTO, Nico Torcita. And we're now trying to start selling this either to schools, getting grants to give this out to schools, and trying to sell it on retail. And then any income we get, we actually pour it on.
How much would something like that cost?
It will cost around $600 to 700 pesos.
Compared to an actual,
I mean, real microscope will cost you 3,000 to 4,000.
Yeah. Now this one, this is in the process, a DIY catapult.
Yeah.
So what was the point behind
the idea here, that's over there.
Yes.
The idea is most kids right now are into tech like iPads and iPhones. So the issue there with that is, they're very digital and try not to lose with their tactile feel. So the idea here is, can we create toys for people to go back into the, building stuff with their hands?
Right.
We need to have, again, you need to strike a balance, right? You just can't go pure digital, you just can't go pure analog. You need to have a balance. So we're creating low-cost toys, maybe that's around 100 pesos to 200 pesos, depending on if it's a deluxe version or a simple version. And the idea there is, you can use catapults to play around in class. You can put it as a toy in your desktop. I know your little brother, your classmate with a spitball.
Yeah, I was so excited to do this that I broke it earlier. Yes. Sorry, but the point is, you can throw things. I broke it earlier.
Yeah, so the idea there is creating tactile toys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's something that.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, I broke this earlier.
So
Now-
we need to do some quality control with the wood, most probably.
This is when you're too excited about something.
Yeah.
I love these. Now we have one of your investors is Apple the app of
Yes.
Black Eyed Peas,
Yes,
and
so
we
this
have
is
here a 3D.
I have him here with me.
Okay,
as
let's
usual.
show him. Let me
So-
hold. I'll hold him
Oh,
over
you can
here.
hold it.
So Apple the app is very much into technology
Technology,
because
yeah.
as we see in all of the videos in Black Eyed Peas, they're very much into
Mm-hmm.
high tech. So what exactly? How did you go about doing this? This is a 3D printout.
Yeah,
isn't
so
it?
that's a 3D printer. Apple the app was kind enough to give us a 3D printer, invested in Awesome Lab to help us again fund the things that we're doing. So we're really lucky to have him. And Apple the app together with the Black Eyed Peas are forward thinkers in technology. They've been trying new technology ever since they came on board, and even up to now. And then he works with us in creating new products, new technologies. Whenever he's here in the Philippines, as he travels
So
around
he
the
brings
world.
his own ideas.
Yeah, he brings
also.
also ideas and we implement them, and then he gives comments to it and how can we improve it.
Okay. And this over here, we have this interesting wooden map of the Philippines. This is still in development.
Yeah, it's in development. So again, I think in Awesome Lab we have a laser cutter, so we do whatever we want with the laser cutter. So one of the things that we're trying to do is there's no really good puzzles. Actually, when you go
You
to
just
stores,
want to use the laser cutter.
actually, we want to use the laser cutter. So I can give all the reasons in the world to make it sound, we're doing something intelligent. But it started with we went to toy stores and there's no
Yes.
toys. There's no Philippine-based toys. So we said, okay, why not come up with laser cut tarsiers, laser
Yeah.
cut mouse deers. And then start, doing laser cut Philippine maps because there's no
Right.
such thing.
Yes,
apparently there's no
it's
such
very
thing as that.
Western. It's all
very,
Western
very
things,
Western.
yeah.
So we
and
want,
you even have facts about, so very good learning
Yeah.
tool. There are facts here listed about
yes,
the
and
Philippines.
then it looks beautiful enough that once you do it, you put it on your wall.
Yes.
So it becomes a memento.
Right.
And it's cheap enough. I think this will retail at around 300 bucks to 400 pesos.
Yes,
So
okay.
we want it to be very accessible to everybody. Our goal in Awesome Lab is to make things accessible.
Yes.
And innovating around those, either through technology. We have a laser cutter. That's why we're being able to cost really low. Being innovative in our business models, and being innovative in how we actually design it. So we're able to maximize everything and keep the cost down.
Now you've done that with the drone, for example, over here. This is an end-of-life drone, isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah.
So that is a
This
very
is made of
sucking- yeah,
styrofoam.
very, you may when you think about drones, you think about the high-tech stuff that the
Yes.
US has. And this looks like a toy.
Yeah.
Carbon fiber, it's a styrofoam toy made of duct tape.
Yeah.
Our design philosophy, again, when we do the research in the university, I didn't have any funds. So we had to make do with what we have. And what we had was foam and duct tape. So the idea was how we put them together into making into a low-cost, lightweight drone that is
Yes.
specialized in other things. So we're able to bring the cost down to 1/4 than the retail price. And from there, we're able to pass on that savings to our clients. And at the same time, because of our design philosophy, it becomes really safe. I mean, if that thing hits you, it's a foam thing, right?
So I'm going to go and get it now and see,
Okay.
because it's very light, isn't it? I'm going to
Okay.
try and pick it up and I will hit. Okay, here we go. So if I take this and I hit you,
Yeah, you get,
Oy!
So you can hit me over here, like in here.
Even
so
this?
Yeah. You can hit,
I
you can
can
hit
cut.
harder.
Harder?
Harder.
Ay!
Oh, sige, you can break it
Harder?
apart. You can break
Really?
it apart. See?
Wow, I like this. Okay.
yes.
Because with the standard ones, they're so strong.
Yeah.
They can
They can
cut.
kill. They can
Yes,
call and
they can
kill.
kill. And there have been many accidents with
Yes.
drones.
So our philosophy of our drones is, make it light, make it cheap, and because it's light and cheap, it becomes relatively safe.
And what has this been used for?
So we've been using this drone specifically has been used for in Yolanda. We've been mapping, this thing has been mapping Leyte for the last 3 months. What we're doing that is we're now mapping the coconut trees that fell down, mapping out where other dead coconut trees, so that we can know what is the damage to the coconut trees due to Typhoon Yolanda.
Yes.
And we're also monitoring the coastline. How do people rebuild after a disasters? How do people build with the current environment that they have, with what they have? And then usually when the disaster relief agents comes in, they give tents, right?
Yes.
So we're trying to see how fast do people rebuild. So initially, when the typhoon struck around November, by January, you have a lot of blue tents because that was what they gave around. But now you're starting to see GI sheets on top of the shelf. So we're now able to use it as our data points to see how people are progressing.
What do you think is the dream project? What are you looking for to really do in one of your labs? I mean, you're still young, but what a great playground you have.
Yeah, so a lot of things actually. So there's many things. What I really want to get into is in biotech research. So how do we, I mean, before it was as Father Jet, the president of Ateneo said
Ateneo.
before it was the era of physics, Newton, it was the era of chemistry, you had the oil, and now it's the era of biology. So how can we do more advanced biotech stuff?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the Philippines doing really good jobs, especially in the dengue, doing dengue research in Ateneo, people doing Alzheimer research here in the Philippines. And that's an area that I'm really excited about going into.
Well, the future of technology in the Philippines is bright thanks to people like you. Thanks for sharing your time with us, Matthew.
No problem. Thank you.
And that is News Cafe for tonight. Thank you, Matthew Kua, for being on the show, and also our guest earlier, Bryan Benitez McLealand. See you next Thursday right here on News Cafe. I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.